Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about Philip K. Dick's short story called The Chromium Fence. It's about basically like a kind of an absurdist sort of dystopia, and mainly it's focused on this rift between these two different factions, which are really social and political factions, and they are called the purists and the naturalists. And the purists believe in hygiene to obviously a very extreme sort of authoritarian degree. They want sweat glands removed. They don't want any body odor. They basically want people to be these kind of human Barbie dolls. Naturalists, however, want the opposite. They want us to be just exactly as we are. Um, and and the whole thing is just this tornado of absurdity that just continues to escalate until the protagonist, Walsh, is then turned in to the police by his own son, or I should say turned into the authorities, because I think that the legal system functions a little bit differently than the way that it does in our world today. Simply because Walsh does not want to comply. He feels like he doesn't really relate to either of the factions. Um, but he feels as if the two factions are inside of him and they're conflicted. They're eating away at him, even though he doesn't really actually want to buy into either of them. And so the part where it gets very weird is the psychiatric robot, or the state psychiatric robot, who was assessing him, and tries to gaslight him, do all the usual things, convince him that he needs to comply. He decides, to his own detriment, no, he will not comply, and then he is executed. I will say it is a really strong story. However, and I don't know if I have mentioned this before, but I think it's important to mention it now. I think that maybe some of the issues I've noticed in a lot of the sci-fi short stories, and I've had this issue too, where it's like, because they're trying to, I think, cram a lot of important details within a very short period of time, and trying to convey a lot of very big ideas, it can sometimes come across like you're watching commercials that are raising awareness about a particular issue. And so the more that element of storytelling, or that sense of spontaneity, sometimes can fall a little bit flat, because there is so much to express. But that aside, I would say that's only a very small fraction of really the story. I would say it's overall an extremely it's very riveting. It's a very exciting story. I'd recommend it because it's you get to see, it kind of does remind me of some of the French and English satire, like even the play Rhinoceros by Eugene Ionesco. And so even though I would say that some of the European writers, that they tend to be a little bit more good, like they have better, more fine-tuned kind of skills at being able to imply certain things rather than just explain them. You see Philip K. Dick does get a taste of that in his writing. He does, and he gets a taste of that nightmarish feeling of human beings basically being in this collective hypnosis. They're caught up in these trivial and really kind of unimportant things that are meant to distract them from probably something much bigger, and they're obviously being used as tools. And I would say that when it comes to particularly that scene with the state psychiatric robot, I think that it plays on a certain kind of fear that is not mentioned quite as often as many of the other more common fears that we hear about, whether they're has to do with a fear of heights, a fear of public speaking. I think in this case, you're interacting with something that has where the lines between being dead and alive start to blur. That's what you feel like when you're interacting with this thing, and it's the fact that he's able to play on that so well is even more scary considering the circumstances that this thing is deciding the fate of the character. And human beings are being treated like in the same way that if you're choosing between what kind of shampoo that you want. There's products are basically being groomed by the society, by the state. And on top of it, having this sort of Eugene Ionesco level of absurdity and humor that is mixed in, it creates a feeling of a feeling of fear, a feeling of intense hatred, a feeling of intense disgust, and you really want it to stop. And I think this also plays into something I've mentioned a few times before about the Philip K. Dick's very sort of seemingly ambiguous views about AI. I'm not really sure where he stood on that, but it's the whole issue of does it, of AI having a soul, does it not have a soul, can you create non-biological life? And in my opinion, as I said, I think that the state psychiatric robot is really a metaphor for something, personifying things that are truly human and that blur the lines, certain psychological lines between what we consider alive or dead. That that it ties into the collective hypnosis, which I think is probably the most important theme in that entire story.